The crystal chandeliers of Lumiere Seoul cast soft golden light across white marble floors. Silence ruled this sanctuary of wealth. Until it didn't. A child's scream shattered the peace like broken glass. 5-year-old Seo Ji-woo sat rigid in his velvet chair, tears streaming down his face, his small body trembling violently. 2 nannies knelt beside him, speaking rapidly in Korean. A private physician checked his pulse with shaking hands. Nothing worked. The restaurant manager dabbed sweat from his forehead. Guests at neighboring tables had stopped eating entirely. No one moved. No one dared. Because seated beside the screaming child was Seo Do-hwan, the White Tiger, chairman of the Seo conglomerate, ruler of shadows most feared to name. His dark eyes remained fixed on his son. His tattooed hand, an intricate Korean-African symbol of intertwined serpents and ancestral shields, rested motionless on the table. A young black woman in a waitress uniform quietly stepped away from her station. Without asking permission, she approached the child. She knelt and gently lifted him into her arms. The boy's screaming stopped. His breathing slowed. Within seconds, his head fell softly against her shoulder. He slept. The entire restaurant froze. Seo Do-hwan slowly rose from his chair. For the first time in 3 years, his emotionless face showed genuine disbelief. Please like, share, and subscribe. The silence that followed lasted exactly 11 seconds. Zahara Nabari felt every single one of them. She stood motionless, the sleeping child warm against her chest, his small fingers curled into the fabric of her black uniform jacket. She hadn't planned this. She hadn't thought at all. She had simply seen a child in pain, and her body had moved before her mind could catch up. Now, standing in the center of Seoul's most exclusive restaurant, she realized what she had done. She had touched the untouchable. The restaurant manager, Mr. Park, appeared at her side instantly. His face was pale. His voice was barely a whisper. Miss Nabari, step back immediately. Zahara didn't move. She couldn't. The boy's grip on her uniform tightened even in sleep, as though he sensed the threat of separation. He'll wake if I move, she said quietly. Please. Give him a moment. Mr. Park opened his mouth to argue. But a voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Leave her. Seo Do-hwan's command was soft. Almost gentle. But it carried the weight of absolute authority. Mr. Park immediately stepped back, bowing deeply. The 2 nannies retreated. The physician gathered his equipment and vanished. Only Zahara remained. She finally allowed herself to look at the man everyone feared. He was taller than she expected. His black suit fit him like armor, tailored, pristine, impenetrable. His jaw was sharp, his cheekbones high, his dark eyes unreadable. But it was his stillness that unsettled her most. He didn't fidget. Didn't blink unnecessarily. He simply observed. Like a predator deciding whether to strike. What is your name? His voice was low. Controlled. Zahara swallowed. Zahara Nabari. He repeated it silently, as though memorizing its shape. How did you do that? She hesitated. I don't know. I just held him. Do-hwan's eyes narrowed slightly. Not with anger. With curiosity. My son has not allowed a stranger to touch him in 3 years. Doctors. Therapists. Family. He screams until they leave. He paused. Yet you held him for 30 seconds, and he sleeps like he's known you his entire life. Zahara had no answer. She only knew that when she had seen the boy crying, something in her chest had ached, an old, familiar pain she recognized from her own past. Loss. Fear. Loneliness. The following afternoon, Do-hwan sat in his private office on the 47th floor of the Seo Tower. Seoul stretched beneath him like a kingdom awaiting orders. But his attention was fixed on the tablet in his hands. On the screen was a photograph. Zahara Nabari, 27 years old. Born in Kampala, Uganda. Former student at the Royal Conservatory of Brussels. Specialty, classical piano. Career status, ended. The report noted a hand injury sustained 4 years ago. Details were sparse. Du Huan scrolled further. Current employment: waitress at AfroSeoul. Residence: a small apartment in Mapo district. Volunteer work: every Sunday at House of Dawn Orphanage. Activities: reading stories, singing lullabies. Du Huan set the tablet down. He leaned back in his leather chair, his tattooed fingers steepled beneath his chin. The serpent and shield ink caught the afternoon light. She was no one. A waitress. A foreigner. A woman with no connections, no power, no reason to matter. And yet, his son had smiled in his sleep last night. For the first time in 3 years, Ji-woo had not woken screaming. Du Huan closed his eyes. He thought of his late wife, of the lullaby she used to sing, of the explosion that had taken her, of the unanswered questions that still haunted him. He opened his eyes. "Secretary Yoon," he said quietly. A man appeared instantly at the door. "Make a reservation at AfroSeoul. Tomorrow evening. My usual table." "For how many guests, Chairman?" Du Huan paused. "Just Ji-woo and myself." The next evening, Zahara was arranging silverware when the whispers began. "He's back. The chairman. And the child." She turned slowly. Seo Du Huan walked through the entrance with his son's hand clasped in his. Ji-woo's eyes were wide. His small body trembled slightly. But when his gaze found Zahara across the room, he stopped trembling. Du Huan noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. His son's breathing had changed the moment he saw the waitress. His grip on Du Huan's hand had loosened. His shoulders had dropped. For a child who lived in constant fear, these were seismic shifts. Du Huan guided Ji-woo to their private table in the corner. He sat down. He ordered nothing. He simply waited. Later that evening, Zahara approached their table to refill the water glasses. Her hands were steady, but her pulse was not. Ji-woo watched her every movement with an intensity that seemed far too old for a 5-year-old. When she finished pouring, she turned to leave. "Wait." Du Huan's voice stopped her. She turned back. "Ji-woo wants to show you something." The boy reached into his small jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it toward her with both hands, his expression serious. Zahara knelt to accept it. She unfolded it carefully. Inside was a drawing. Crayon lines formed a figure with dark skin and curly hair. Beside the figure was a smaller shape, a child. They were holding hands. Zahara's breath caught. She looked at Ji-woo. His dark eyes searched her face, waiting for her reaction. "Is this us?" she asked softly. He nodded. "You made me not scared." The words were barely a whisper, but they struck Zahara like thunder. She felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "Thank you, Ji-woo. This is beautiful." The boy's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Closer than anyone had seen in years. Across the table, Du Huan watched in silence. His expression revealed nothing. But his hand, resting on the white tablecloth, had curled into a fist. Not from anger. From something he couldn't name. Something that frightened him far more than any enemy ever had. Several days later, the reservations continued. Every evening, Seo Du Huan arrived with his son. Every evening, they requested the same table. Every evening, Ji-woo's eyes searched the room until they found Zahara. The restaurant staff whispered constantly. "Why does he keep coming? Is it about the waitress? She's nobody. She can't be important." But Mr. Park knew better. He watched the chairman's gaze follow Zahara across the room. He watched the way Du Huan's jaw tightened whenever another server approached his table. He watched, and he worried. One evening, Ji-woo refused to eat. The nannies tried everything. Different dishes. Different utensils. Different temperatures. Nothing worked. The boy sat with his arms crossed, his plate untouched. Du Huan's patience was legendary. But even legends have limits. "What do you want?" he asked his son quietly. Ji-woo pointed across the room. "At Zahara." Across the city. Zahara sat in her small apartment, staring at the drawing Ji-woo had given her. She had pinned it to her refrigerator. Every time she passed it, something tugged at her heart. She didn't understand the connection she felt with the boy. She only knew it was real. And it terrified her. Because she had seen the way his father looked at her. Not with warmth. Not with gratitude. With calculation. With assessment. As though she were a problem to be solved. She knew who Seo Do-hwan was. Everyone in Seoul knew. His legitimate businesses were vast. His illegitimate ones were whispered about in shadows. Men feared him. Women avoided him. And yet his son had chosen her. The following afternoon, Zahara arrived at work to find Mr. Park waiting at the staff entrance. His face was pale. "Miss Nabari, the chairman requests a private meeting." Her stomach dropped. "When?" "Now." The private meeting room on Lumiere's upper floor was small but elegant. Cream walls. Fresh flowers. Soft lighting. Zahara felt none of its comfort. She felt only the weight of Seo Do-hwan's gaze as she entered. He stood by the window, his back to her. His tattooed hand rested against the glass. "Close the door." She obeyed. The click echoed like a gunshot. He turned slowly. "My son has eaten 3 full meals this week. All of them in your presence." Zahara said nothing. "He has slept through the night 4 times. This has not happened since his mother died." Still, she waited. Do-hwan stepped closer. "I don't believe in coincidences, Miss Nabari. I don't believe in miracles. I believe in leverage. In control. In understanding why things happen." His dark eyes locked onto hers. "So tell me, why does my son respond to you?" Zahara's heart pounded. But she held his gaze. "I don't know, Mr. Seo. I wish I did. But I'm not hiding anything. I'm not plotting anything. I'm just a waitress." "No." His voice sharpened. "You are not just anything. You calmed a child who has rejected every specialist in Asia. You earned his trust in 30 seconds. That is not ordinary." He paused. "I want you to work for me." The words hung in the air. Zahara blinked. "Excuse me. As Ji-woo's caretaker, you would live in my estate. You would be responsible for his daily comfort. You would be compensated generously. I'm not a nanny. I know. I have no qualifications. I don't need qualifications. I need results. You have already provided them." Zahara shook her head slowly. "Mr. Seo, I can't just leave my life to move into a stranger's home. I am not a stranger. Not anymore. You are to me." Something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance. Respect. Both. "Then consider this. My son is the only thing I care about in this world. If you can help him heal, I will give you anything you want. Money. Security. Freedom to leave whenever you choose." His voice lowered. "But if you refuse, he will return to the darkness he lived in before. And I will have watched you walk away from a child who reached for you when he reached for no one else." The silence stretched. Zahara thought of Ji-woo's drawing. Of his small hand holding out the paper. Of his whispered words. "You made me not scared." She closed her eyes. "I'll think about it." Do-hwan nodded slowly. "You have until tomorrow evening." Weeks passed. Zahara accepted the position. Not for the money. Not for the security. For the boy who waited at the window every morning, watching for her car to arrive. The Seo estate was a fortress of modern architecture and ancient stone walls. Guards patrolled every entrance. Cameras monitored every corridor. But inside Ji-woo's playroom, there was only warmth. Zahara taught him rhythm by clapping games. She taught him melody by humming simple tunes. She couldn't play piano anymore. Her right hand had never fully healed, but she could still carry music in her voice. And Ji-woo listened like she was singing secrets meant only for him. One afternoon, Do-hwan returned early from a meeting. He heard laughter echoing from the playroom. He followed the sound. He found his son sitting on the floor, giggling as Zahara made animal sounds to accompany a storybook. Jiwoo was smiling. Actually smiling. Du Huan stood in the doorway, invisible. He watched Zahara turn the page and growl like a lion. He watched Jiwoo collapse into laughter. He watched, and felt something crack inside his chest. A fissure in walls he had spent years reinforcing. Later that evening, Du Huan sat alone in his study. A glass of whiskey rested untouched beside him. He stared at the flames dancing in the fireplace. Secretary Yoon. The man appeared instantly. The investigation into my wife's death. The files we closed 3 years ago. Yes, Chairman. Reopen them. Several days later, a new figure arrived at the Seo estate. Dr. Kong Min-jae. Pediatric psychologist. 34 years old. Charming. Handsome. Highly recommended by Seoul's top medical institutions. Du Huan had hired him to assess Jiwoo's emotional progress. What he hadn't expected was Dr. Kang's obvious fascination with Zahara. You have a remarkable gift with children, Dr. Kang told her during their first meeting. Jiwoo's improvement is extraordinary. The chairman must be very grateful. Zahara smiled politely. I just try to be present with him. That's rare. Presence. Most people are too distracted by their own noise to truly see children. He stepped closer. May I ask, how did you learn to connect so deeply? Across the room, Du Huan pretended to read a report. But his eyes tracked every movement Dr. Kong made. Every smile. Every gesture. Every inch of space the doctor closed between himself and Zahara. His tattooed hand tightened around his pen. Later that evening, Du Huan's chief bodyguard, Quan, approached him quietly. Chairman, Dr. Kong has requested permission to take Miss Nabari to dinner. To discuss Jiwoo's treatment plan. Du Huan's expression didn't change. Denied. Sir. All consultations will take place on estate grounds. No exceptions. Quan hesitated. Then bowed. Understood. In her room that night, Zahara found a small envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a woman, Korean, elegant, beautiful, holding a baby. On the back, in faded ink, to my Jiwoo. May you always know you are loved. Zahara recognized the baby's face. The woman must have been his mother. But who had left this? And why? The following afternoon, Jiwoo woke from a nightmare. He screamed for Zahara. By the time she reached his room, he was hyperventilating, his small body shaking violently. She gathered him into her arms. She began to hum. The melody came without thought, an old African lullaby her grandmother had taught her. Soft, slow, aching with ancient comfort. Jiwoo's breathing slowed. His trembling stopped. And then, he whispered something that made Zahara's blood run cold. Mommy used to sing that. She pulled back, staring at him. What did you say? The song. Mommy sang it. Before she went away. Zahara's mind raced. How was that possible? She had learned this lullaby in Uganda. From her grandmother. It was not Korean. It was not modern. How could Jiwoo's mother have known it? Later that evening, Zahara found Du Huan in his study. She placed the photograph on his desk. Someone left this under my door. He looked at it. His jaw tightened. Where did you get this? I told you. Someone left it. He picked up the photograph. His thumb traced his late wife's face. Her name was Seo Yuna. She was the only person I ever trusted completely. He paused. She died 3 years ago. An explosion during a business trip overseas. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sympathy changes nothing. Zahara hesitated. Jiwoo said something today. During a nightmare. Du Huan looked up. He said his mother used to sing the lullaby I was humming. But Mr. Seo, that lullaby is from my grandmother. From Uganda. How could your wife have known it? The silence that followed was deafening. Du Huan stood slowly. My wife traveled extensively before we married. She spent 2 years working with refugee children in East Africa. He walked to the window. She used to say she learned more about love in those camps than in any church or school. He turned back. Perhaps she learned your lullaby there. Zahara's heart ached. Then maybe Ji-woo isn't just responding to me. Maybe he's responding to a memory. A piece of his mother he thought he'd lost. Du-hwan's expression shifted. Something vulnerable passed through his eyes. Something human. Perhaps. Across the city, a man named Baek Sung-ho sat in a darkened room, watching surveillance footage. The footage showed Zahara entering the Seo estate. It showed her holding Ji-woo. It showed Du-hwan watching her with an expression Baek had never seen on the white tiger's face. Softness. Weakness. Baek smiled. He had served the Seo organization for 15 years. He had watched Du-hwan rise from underboss to supreme leader. He had also watched him become untouchable, unreachable, unkillable. But now there was a crack. A waitress. A foreigner. A nobody. And she had done what no enemy had ever accomplished. She had made Seo Du-hwan vulnerable. Increase surveillance on the estate, Baek ordered. Find out everything about the African woman. Her family. Her past. Her weaknesses. His lieutenant hesitated. Sir, if the chairman discovers. He won't. Not until it's too late. Weeks passed. Zahara settled into a rhythm at the estate. Mornings with Ji-woo. Afternoons in the garden. Evenings in quiet solitude. She rarely saw Du-hwan during the day. He was always working. Always strategizing. Always disappearing into meetings that ended with grim-faced men leaving through back entrances. But at night, sometimes she found him in the kitchen at 2 a.m., drinking tea alone. Sometimes he appeared in the doorway when Ji-woo couldn't sleep, watching silently as she sang the boy back to peace. And sometimes, rarely, they talked. One night, she found him staring at his wife's photograph. You must miss her terribly. He didn't look up. I don't miss her. Missing implies she could return. She cannot. Then what do you feel? Silence. Then failure. Zahara sat across from him. You didn't fail her. You don't know that. I know you loved her. Ji-woo told me. He said his father never smiled after mommy left. That tells me everything I need to know about how much she meant to you. Du-hwan finally looked at her. His dark eyes searched her face. Why do you care? Because your son cares. And I care about him. Something shifted in the air between them. Not romance. Not yet. But recognition. Two wounded people seeing each other clearly for the first time. The following afternoon, Dr. Kong requested another private consultation with Zahara. Du-hwan denied it again. This time, Dr. Kong pushed back. Chairman Seo, with respect, my professional assessment requires understanding Miss Nabarry's methodology. One dinner conversation would be. No. The word was final. Dr. Kang's charming smile faltered. He bowed stiffly and left. That evening, Kwon approached Du-hwan with troubling news. Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting a surveillance operation targeting the estate. The source appears to be internal. Du-hwan's expression didn't change. Who? We're still confirming. But the primary focus appears to be Miss Nabarry. Later that evening, Du-hwan found Zahara reading in the library. You need to leave the estate less frequently. She looked up. Excuse me. Your Sunday volunteer work. The orphanage. You need to suspend it temporarily. Why? Security concerns. What kind of concerns? He hesitated. Someone may be watching you. Zahara's blood chilled. Who? Why would anyone watch me? Because you matter to Ji-woo. And Ji-woo matters to me. That makes you a target. She stood. A target for what? For leverage. For exploitation. For control. His voice hardened. I have enemies, Miss Nabarry. Enemies who have waited years for a weakness to exploit. If they believe you are that weakness, they will come for you. Fear flickered in her eyes. But beneath it was something stronger. Defiance. I am not a weakness. No. But you could become one. Then what do you suggest? He stepped closer. Stay here. Stay safe. Let me protect you until the threat is neutralized. And if I refuse? His jaw tightened. Then I will protect you anyway, whether you consent or not. Several days later, Zahara was walking in the garden with Ji-woo when the attack came. 3 men, masked, armed. They emerged from behind the stone wall where security coverage briefly lapsed. Ji-woo screamed. Zahara grabbed him and ran. The estate's alarm systems activated instantly. Guards swarmed from every direction. But the attackers weren't after ransom. They were after proof. Proof that the White Tiger had a vulnerability. And they got it. One photograph. Zahara holding Ji-woo. Terror on both their faces. That was all they needed. Later that evening, Du-hwan stood in the security command center, watching the footage replay. His face was stone. His hands trembled with barely contained rage. Find them, he said quietly. Find them and bring them to me alive. In her room, Zahara held Ji-woo close. He hadn't spoken since the attack. He simply clung to her, his face buried in her shoulder. She hummed the lullaby, over and over, until his shaking stopped, until his breathing slowed, until he finally slept. When Du-hwan appeared in the doorway, Zahara looked up. Their eyes met. No words were necessary. He crossed the room silently. He sat beside her. And for the first time since his wife's death, he allowed himself to lean on another person. His forehead touched her shoulder. His breath shuddered. I will keep you both safe. I swear it. Weeks passed. The attackers were found. They were low-level operatives working for Baek Sung-ho. Under interrogation, they revealed the truth Du-hwan had suspected for 3 years. His wife's death was not an accident. It was an assassination. Ordered by Baek. Funded by a faction within Du-hwan's own organization. They had wanted to destabilize his leadership. To create a succession crisis. To seize power while he grieved. But Du-hwan had been stronger than they anticipated. He had buried his grief. Built walls around his heart. And waited. Now, he understood why. He had been waiting for proof. And proof had finally arrived. That evening, Du-hwan found Zahara on the rooftop terrace. She was watching the city lights below. He joined her in silence. You know, don't you, she asked, about your wife? Yes. What will you do? What must be done? She turned to face him. And after? When it's finished. He looked at her. Really looked. At the woman who had walked into his restaurant and changed everything. At the woman who had healed his son. At the woman who had made him feel something other than emptiness for the first time in years. After? I don't know. I never planned for after. Maybe it's time to start. He stepped closer. Zahara. It was the first time he had used her name without her title. Her heart stuttered. Yes. I am not a good man. I have done things that would horrify you. I have ordered deaths. I have destroyed lives. I have built an empire on fear and blood. He paused. But when I am with you, I remember what it felt like to want something other than power. To want peace. To want home. His voice dropped. You have become my home. And I don't know how to survive losing that. Zahara's eyes glistened. I'm not leaving. You should. It would be safer. Safety isn't everything. What is, then? She reached up. Her fingers touched his jaw. His tattooed hand rose to cover hers. Belonging, she whispered. Being seen. Being chosen despite everything. Their foreheads touched. You see me, he said. I do. And you stay. I stay. The kiss that followed was not passion. It was surrender. Two souls finally lowering their defenses. Two wounded hearts finally trusting. Fade to black. The following weeks brought war. Not loud, not public, but absolute. Du Huan dismantled Baek Sung-ho's faction from within. He exposed their crimes to the organization's ruling council. He provided evidence of the assassination plot against his wife. He demanded justice. And he received it. Baek was stripped of everything. His wealth, his power, his freedom. The guilty were handed to authorities. The treacherous were exiled. The loyal were rewarded. But Du Huan went further. He called a gathering of the organization's leadership. And he announced his retirement. "The empire dies with me," he declared. "My son will inherit my legitimate businesses. Not my sins. This ends here." The room erupted. Questions. Protests. Demands. But Du Huan was finished listening. He walked out. And he didn't look back. 1 year later, the rooftop terrace had been transformed. White chairs lined a flower-strewn aisle. A small string quartet played softly.